قلت علاش لا منقراوش من وضعياتنا واحد شويه. كاين هذا الكتاب كنت شريته، هذا سميتو The Power of Now. كنت شريته هذه شي شهر واقيلا مع شي كتب اخرين. دوك الكتب الاخرين كاملين قريت فيهم، هذا مازال ما قصتوش. The Power of Now مازال ما قصتوش، مازال ما قربتش ليه وما عرفتش علاش. كنت فريمون متحمسه انني نقرا. اجي نقراو دابا من وضعياتنا ما خاسرين والو. انا نقرا عليكم، الا كنتو باغيين ديروا شي حاجه ديروها وصنتوا ليا في نفس الوقت وانا كنقرا لكم. اوكي نبداو من الاولى. هنا عندنا واحد الكوت كتقول you are here to enable the divine purpose of the universe to unfold. That is how important you are. زوينه هادي. عندي هنايا ماركر ديالي مفتوح ماركي به في مكتوبه، هذه عجبتني دونك ماركيها. اصلا اغلبيه الاحيان دوك الكوتس الاولانيين اللي كيكونوا في هاد الكتب كيكونوا شي حاجات زوينين، حيتاش بما ان شي واحد خدم الوقت ديالو باش ماشي خدم الوقت ديالو، بما ان الكاتب عجباتو ديك الكوت الا تكون عندها شي معنى اللي زوين وانت غادي يعجبك داكشي علاش هو اصلا حاطه تمايا، ولا ما كانش غادي يحطها اصلا من الاول. اوكي انا عاد نقراها مره اخرى حيت عجبتني. You are here to enable the divine purpose of the universe to unfold. That is how important you are. تارارا. غادي ندوزو للكونتنتس. ما نقراش هادشي، ما عندنا ما نديرو به كونتنتس. داكشي ديال نبداو footer introduction, footer author preface, footer هادشي ما عندنا ما نديرو به. and نستارتيو من the power of now. Okay, let's begin. Introduction معرفتش نديروها ولا بلاش من introduction I think. غنشوف شحال فيها، الا كانت ما عندنا من نديرو بها سو نقزوها. الا كانت زوينه I think ما عندنا ما نديرو بها حيتاش فيها شي 4 صفحات على والو، 4 الورقات ماشي صفحات باغون. يومين نشوف هنايا. اوكي نبداو من الشابتر الاول. سميت chapter You are not your mind. The greatest obstacle to enlightenment. Enlightenment, what is that? A beggar had been sitting by the side of a road for over 30 years. One day, a stranger walked by. Spare some change? Mumbled the beggar, mechanically holding out his old baseball cap. I have nothing to give you, said the stranger. Then he asked, what's that you are sitting on? Nothing, replied the beggar. Just an old box. I have been sitting on it for as long as I can remember. Ever looked inside? Asked the stranger. No, said the beggar. What's the point? There's nothing in there. Have a look inside, insisted the stranger. The beggar managed to pry open the lid. With astonishment, disbelief, and elation, he saw that the box was filled with gold. I am that stranger who has nothing to give you and who is telling you to look inside. Not inside any box, as in the parable, but somewhere even closer, inside yourself. But I am not a beggar, I can hear you say. Those who have not found their true wealth, which is the radiant joy of being and the deep, unshakable peace that comes with it, are beggars. Even if they have great material wealth, they are looking outside for scraps of pleasure or fulfillment, for validation, security, or love, while they have a treasure within that not only includes all those things, but is infinitely greater than anything the world can offer. The word enlightenment conjures up the idea of some superhuman accomplishment, and the ego likes to keep it that way. But it is simply your natural state of felt oneness with being. It is a state of connectedness with something immeasurable and indestructible, something that almost paradoxically is essentially you and yet is much greater than you. It is finding your true nature beyond name and form. The inability to feel this connectedness gives rise to the illusion of separation from yourself and from the world around you. You then perceive yourself, consciously or unconsciously, as an isolated fragment. Fear arises, and conflict within and without becomes the norm. I love the Buddha's simple definition of enlightenment as the end of suffering. There is nothing superhuman in that, is there? Of course, as a definition, it is incomplete. It only tells you what enlightenment is not. No suffering. But what's left when there is no more suffering? The Buddha is silent on that, and his silence implies that you'll have to find out for yourself. He uses a negative definition so that the mind cannot make it into something to believe in or into a superhuman accomplishment, a goal that is impossible for you to attain. Despite this precaution, the majority of Buddhists still believe that enlightenment is for the Buddha, not for them, at least not in this lifetime. You use the word being. Can you explain what you mean by that? Being is the eternal, ever present one life beyond the myriad forms of life that are subject to birth and death. However, being is not only beyond but also deep within every form as its enormous, invisible, and indestructible essence. This means that it is as accessible to you now as your own deepest self, your true nature. But don't seek to grasp it with your mind. Don't try to understand it. You can know it only when the mind is still, when you are present, when your attention is fully and intensely in the now. Being can be felt, but it can never be understood mentally. To regain awareness of being and to abide in that state of feeling realization is enlightenment. When you say being, are you talking about God? If you are, then why don't you say it? The word God has become empty of meaning through those thousands of years of misuse. I use it sometimes, but I do so sparingly. By misuse, I mean that people who have never even glimpsed the realm of the sacred, the infinite vastness behind that word, use it with great conviction, as if they knew what they are talking about, or they argue against it as if they knew what it is that they are denying. This misuse gives rise to absurd beliefs, assertions, and egoic delusions, such as my or our God is the only true God and your God is false. Or Nietzsche's famous statement, God is dead. استغفر الله العظيم ما تشتهيني بطبيعة الحال أنت مقشف في أفكار بزاف. The word God has become a closed concept. The moment the word is uttered, a mental image is created, no longer perhaps of an old man with a white beard, but still a mental representation of someone or something outside you, and yes, almost inevitably a male, someone, or something. Neither God nor being, nor any other word can define or explain the ineffable reality behind the word. So the only important question is whether the word is a help or a or a or a hindrance in enabling you to experience that toward which it points. Does it point beyond itself to that transcendental reality, or does it lend itself too easily to becoming no more than an idea in your head that you believe in, a mental idol? The word being explains nothing, but nor does God. Being, however, has the advantage that it is an open concept. It does not reduce the infinite invisibility to a finite entity. It is impossible to form a mental image of it. Nobody can claim exclusive possession of being. It is your very essence, and it is immediately accessible to you as the feeling of your own presence. The realization I am that is prior to I am this or I am that. So it is only a small step from the word being to the experience of being. What is the greatest obstacle to experiencing this reality? Identification with your mind, which causes thought to become compulsive. Not to be able to stop thinking is a dreadful affliction, but we don't realize this because almost everybody is suffering from it. So it is considered normal. This incessant mental noise prevents you from finding that realm of inner stillness that is inseparable from being. It also creates a false mind-made self that casts a shadow of fear and suffering. We will look at all that in more detail later. The philosopher Descartes believed that he had found the most fundamental truth when he made his famous statement, I think, therefore I am. كنا عارفين هذه. أنا أفكر إذا أنا موجود. ما عرفت شناهي ديال سقراط. I think سقراط ياكو. I think therefore I am. He had in fact given expression to the most basic error, to equate thinking with being and identity with thinking. The compulsive thinker, which means almost everyone, lives in a state of apparent separateness in an insanely complex world of continuous problems and conflict, a world that reflects the ever-increasing fragmentation of the mind. Enlightenment is a state of wholeness, of being at one and therefore at peace, at one with life in its manifested aspect, the world as well as with your deepest self and life unmanifested, at one with being. Enlightenment is not only the end of suffering and continuous conflict within and without, but also the end of the dreadful enslavement to incessant thinking. What an incredible liberation that this is. واحد الدقيقة أنا معاكم بغيت نقضي واحد اللعيبة حينتاش عندي كلاس من هنايا واحد almost ساعة، واخا اليوم الحد عندي كلاس وخاصني ندير المكانة باش ما ننساش راسي، حيت ملي كنقرا كنمشي كنسولي خاصني نصايب، خاصني نمشي نقرا كاع. واحد دقيقة. اوكي حنا دابا وصلنا في الصفحة 15. اوكي اوكي نكملو ولا لا تبزية واخا بقى يلاه نبدا من غير فاش كانوا دايرين على الله وباللي فاش تعمقوا في داكشي ما كيعجبنيش نقرا عليه بحال داكشي، حيتاش بخصوص كان شي حاجه بحال هكا اونلاين، حيتاش الناس كيقولوا فهمتي تعمق في داكشي بزاف، تصدق عندك شي افكار الحاديه ولا شي حاجه بحال هكاك، ولكن ما كانش خبر بلا داك الكتاب هذا فيه. حيت the power of now نقول لكم صراحه الفكره الوحيده اللي كانت عندي عليه هو غادي يكون كنشرح لكم، غادي يكون على انه زعما ما خصكش تبقى تاجل داكشي تاعك من بعد، وانك خصك ديرو في الوقيته تاعو نيشان. ما يصحابنيش غادي يكون كاع كيدوي على والبديل ديالو على الأقل دابا لحد الصفحة 15 داوي على داكشي. واحد الدقيقة. Identification with your mind creates an opaque screen of concepts. And okay. نكملو. Identification with your mind creates an opaque screen of concepts, labels, images, words, judgments, and definitions that blocks all true relationships. It comes between you and yourself, between you and your fellow man and women, between you and nature, between you and God. It is the screen of thought that creates the illusion of separateness, the illusion that there is you and a totally separate other. You then forget the essential fact that underneath the level of physical appearances and separate forms, you are one with all that is. By forget, I mean that you can no longer feel this oneness as self-evident reality. You may believe it to be true, but you no longer know it to be true. A belief may be comforting. Only through your own experience, however, does it become liberating. Thinking has become a disease. Disease happens when things get out of balance. For example, there is nothing wrong with cells dividing and multiplying in the body, but when this process continues in disregard of the total organism, cells proliferate and we have disease. The mind is a superb instrument if used rightly. Used wrongly, however, it becomes very destructive. To put it more accurately, it is not so much that you use your mind wrongly. You usually don't use it at all. It uses you. That is when. So, mark it up. Unmarquee, the mind is a superb instrument of use if used rightly. Used wrongly, however, it becomes very destructive. To put it more accurately, it is not much that you use your mind wrongly. You usually don't use it at all. Means you're stupid. It uses you. What does it uses you? You don't use your mind, it uses you. Okay, so نكملوا. This is the disease. You believe that you are your mind. This is the delusion. The instrument has taken you over. I don't quite agree. It is true that I do a lot of aimless thinking like most people, but I can still choose to use my mind to get and accomplish things, and I do that all the time. Just because you can solve a crossword puzzle or build an atom bomb doesn't mean that you use your mind. Just as dogs love to chew bones, the mind loves to get its teeth into problems. That's why it does crossword puzzles and builds atom bombs. You have no interest in either. Let me ask you this. Can you be free of your mind whenever you want to? Have you found the off button? You mean stop thinking altogether? No, I can't, except maybe for a moment or two. Then the mind is using you. You are unconsciously identified with it, so you don't even know that you are its slave. It's almost as if you were possessed without knowing it, and so you take the possessing entity to be yourself. The beginning of freedom is the realization that you are not the possessing entity, the thinker. Knowing this enables you to observe the entity. The moment you start watching the thinker, a higher level of consciousness becomes activated. You then begin to realize that there is a vast realm of intelligence beyond thought, that thought is only a tiny aspect of that intelligence. You also realize that all the things that truly matter, beauty, love, creativity, joy, inner peace, arise from beyond the mind. You begin to awaken. You begin to awaken. عييت. مول فاش كنقرا بجد، مول فاش كنقرا بدماغي دغيا كيدوز، ولكن دابا عيا ليا فمي في قوة الهضرة، مول فاش كندوي هادشي كامل. اوكي. Feel freeing yourself from your mind. What exactly do you mean by watching the thinker? When someone goes to the doctor and says I'm sorry نشوف شنو هذا وانا معكم. كاين شي بروبليم je pense. اوكي تزولي دغيا شويه هنايا. معلش اوكي نكملو. What exactly do you mean by watching the thinker? When someone goes to the doctor and says, I hear a voice in my head, he or she will most likely be sent to a psychiatrist. The fact is that, in a very similar way, virtually everyone hears a voice or several voices in their head all the time. The involuntary thought process that you don't realize you have the power to stop, continuous monologues or dialogues. You have probably come across mad people in the street incessantly talking or muttering to themselves. Well, that's not much different from what you and all other normal people do, except that you don't do it out loud. That's true. Very true. The voice comments, speculates, judges, compares, complains, likes, dislikes, and so on. The voice isn't necessarily relevant to the situation you find yourself in at the time. It may be reviving the recent or distant past, or rehearsing or imagining possible future situations. Here, it often imagines things going wrong and negative outcomes. This is called worry. Sometimes this soundtrack is accompanied by visual images or mental movies. Even if the voice is relevant to the situation at hand, it will interpret it in terms of the past. This is because the voice belongs to your conditioned mind, which is the result of all your past history as well as of the collective cultural mindset you inherited. So you see and judge the present through the eyes of the past and get a totally distorted view of it. It is not uncommon for the voice to be a person's own worst enemy. Many people live with a tormentor in their head that continuously attacks and punishes them and drains them of vital energy. It is the cause of untold misery and unhappiness, as well as of disease. The good news is that you can free yourself from your mind. This is the only true liberation. You can take the first step right now. Start listening to the voice in your head as often as you can. Pay particular attention to any repetitive thought patterns. Those old gramophone records that have been playing in your head perhaps for many years. This is what I mean by watching the thinker, which is another way of saying listen to the voice in your head. Be there as the witnessing presence. When you listen to that voice, listen to it impartially. That is to say, do not judge. Do not judge or condemn what you hear, for doing so would mean that the same voice has come in again through the back door. You'll soon realize there is the voice, and here I am listening to it, watching it. This is I am realizing this sense of your own presence. Presence is not a thought. It arises from beyond the mind. So, when you listen to a thought, you are aware not only of the thought, but also of yourself as the witness of the thought. A new dimension of consciousness has come in. As you listen to the thought, you feel a conscious presence, your deeper self, behind or underneath the thought, as it were. The thought then loses its power over you and quickly subsides because you are no longer energizing the mind through identification with it. This is the beginning of the end of involuntary and compulsive thinking. When a thought subsides, you experience a discontinuity in the mental stream, a gap of no mind. At first, the gaps will be short, a few seconds perhaps, but gradually they will become longer. When these gaps occur, you feel a certain stillness and peace inside you. This is the beginning of your natural state of felt oneness with being, which is usually obscured by the mind, which with practice, the sense of stillness and peace will deepen. In fact, there is no end to its depth. You will also feel subtle emanation of joy arising from deep within, the joy of being. It is not a trance-like state, not at all. There is no loss of consciousness here. The opposite is the case. If the price of peace were a lowering of your consciousness, and the price of stillness a lack of vitality and alertness, then they would not be worth having. In this state of inner connectedness, you are much more alert, more awake than in the mind identified state. You are fully present. It also raises the vibrational frequency of the energy field that gives life to the physical body. أوي واحد قدرني فمي. نص ساعة تقريبا دابا وحنا كنقراو. حنا غاديين نزيدو شي جوبونس شي ما عرفتش صراحه 10 ديال الصفحات بحال هكاك ونساليو اليوم. فريمون عييت ضرني فمي. الجو ديالي الفك ديالي ضرني عييت. اوكي نكملو. لحد الان الكتاب ما عرفتش الصراحه، ماشي شي كنتوقع لكم كيدوي عليه. توقعت بكم كيدوي عليه كتاب ديال التحفيز، ماشي هادشي ديال عقلك تقد تطفي ما يفكرش. شكون قالك انا مابغاش عقلي يفكر؟ مايبي هذه زعما تعرف شكون الكاتب ديال هذا الكتاب هذا؟ إيكهارت تول. هاد إيكهارت تول مثلا بو علاش انا ما باش نفكر ميبي هو هاد الكتاب ديالو الاوفر ثينكرز اللي كيفكروا اكثر من القياس وكيبغوا بعض المرات just like switch off their minds يطفيو عقلهم and like just like not think about anything and maybe الناس اللي ملي كيجيو ناس وكيبقاو يفكروا بزاف. انا من بعض المرات من داك النوع اللي كيبقى ملي تنفكر ماشي كنفكر في شي حاجه اللي مهمه، عقلي خدام وصافي، خدام في الباك جراوند ما يخلينيش الناس وصافي. maybe كتقول دوك الناس I hope chapter الثاني ما غاديش يكون بحال هكا، حيت الا كان الكتاب كامل هذا ما غاديش نكملو ويكون اول كتاب نشريه في حياتي وما نكملوش وهذا، حيت ديجا هذا الكتاب هذا انا ما فهمتش كيفاش شريته، ابان ليا بزرق وزويون وانا نشريه حيت it's my favorite color. مفترض انا نكتبها ما تنشريهم حتى كي نشرح لكم حتى كيكون ديجا عندي واحد الفكره على اشنو كيدوي، وكنكون ديجا مثلا قريت شي حاجه مثلا شي ريفيو زوين عليهم، ولا عندي واحد سنيبيت ديال شنو هذا الكتاب على اشنو دابا بالضبط. هذا الكتاب ما غير شتو شريته كومونديتو طلع ليا بحال هكا، شريت الكولور دارك بلو لافي بوري داكشي دغيا عجبني شريته داز. ايوا كوني قلبت عليه واحد شويه عاد شريته، واحد كون ضيعت من وقتي واحد ربع ساعه نشوف اونلاين كي داير وداكشي، ما كنتش غادي نصيد صراحه. ماشي مشكل ماشي مشكل. ما نعاودش بحال هاد القضيه مره اخرى الا تصيدت في هاد الكتاب زعما ما عجبنيش اخر مره باقي نديرها. وخير عرفتي قال لك don't judge the book by its cover، ما تحكمش على الكتاب من الغلاف ديالو. هي هادي ديالي انا مع هاد الكتاب هذا cause the title is not what's inside، ولكن معليش نحكم عليه حتى يلاه صفحه 20 صفحه 20 دونك maybe هادي غير introduction overall شنو زعما خاص يكون في دماغك قبل ما تبدا هاد الكتاب. I hope that's the case. كنحاول نشوف الشابترز اللي هنايا شنو هما. chapter زوين I think. سميتو كاين في صفحه 90 if you have the book. العنوان ديال chapter the past cannot survive in your presence. This is good for مثلا الناس اللي نادمين على شي حاجه اللي داروها في الباسي ديالهم ولا شي حاجه. I think this is like really good and it can help you. Such quotes really help me, they really do. From time to time كنتفكر شي quotes اللي كي مثلا الا كنت قريت داك الكتاب ديال The Art of Not Giving a Fuck like حتى هو داك الكتاب فيما كتكون شي حاجه اللي كديرونجيني في دماغي، شي حاجه اللي امبارسين، شي حاجه اللي مثلا كنت خارجه غير في الزنقه وكنشرح لكم وامبارساتني بزاف وما كرهتش كيفاش نبدلها، كنتفكر شي كوتس كانوا في داك الكتاب اللي فريمون ما عرفتش كنشرح لكم خلاوني ان واخا طرا شي حاجه اللي اوكورد ولا اللي كنت نتمنى انها ما طراش صافي طرات، ما عندي كيفاش نبدلها ياك. دونك صافي ما كاينلاش فكر فيها وما كاينلاش نبقى انا كنقول دماغي علاش وهذا وهذا وهذا. صافي طرات خايبه الله يجعل صافي الله يسر دوز وخليني نوصل لاشنو اخر نوصل ليه. الحياه غاده، الحياه ما كتوقفش في ديك اللحظه اللي انت كتقول فيها لا وانا هذا. حاول تفكر معايا مثلا دوك اللي كيقراو معاك كاع اللقطات الاوكورد اللي طراو ليهم في القسم بحال وانا ما تكون عاقل حتى وحده فيهم كاع. دونك حتى دوك الناس كاملين اللي دايرين بيك راه 99% 99% ما عقلينش اصلا شنو هما اللقطات المحرجه انت زدتي منهم قدامهم. واحد النهار انا كنت ضربت واحد الطيحه عالميه عمري ننساها في حياتي، كنت كبيره ماشي زعما في الصغور ديالي كاع ولا شي حاجه، لا كان جو بونس كنت في الثانوي ديجا، يعني غير شي عامين دابا ولا شي بحال هكاك، وكنت ضربت واحد الطيحه عالميه. كنت باقا في المغرب واحد الطيحه عالميه كنت ضربتها ما تنساش ليا. جيت مقلوبه وسط هذاك، جيت مقلوبه دروج الزنقه برا، يعني المغاري خارج دايز تنقع عمرها وجيت مقلوبه زلقت كنشتا كتبات وتما الغيسون فش شحال بقيت كنفكر فيها وشحال ودماغي تيطلق كنقول علاش نطيح انايا وعلاش انا اللي نطيح والناس كاملين شافوني ويبقاو عاقلين عليها وهذا يقدر يكونوا باقيين عاقلين علينا ومن بعد اشنو يبدل انايا فيا ولا ما يبدلش في اشنو يتبدل فيا الا كانوا هما عاقلين حتى حاجه ما كاين حتى شي فرق دونك لاش انايا نبقى مبرزطه راسي كنقول لا واش عاقلين لا واش ما عاقلينش وهذا وكوني ما طردتش ليا وهذا كوني الا رجعت بالوقت اللور ولقيت كيفاش ما نزلقش هي هذيك بما انني عارفه بلي هذا الاحتمال 100% ما يمكنش وما عمره ما غادي يطرا علاش غادي نصدع انا دماغي وعلاش انا نبقى نقول ايوا كون غير ما طحتش لاش انا غنبقى كنفكر بهذه الطريقه هذه صافي جربت فكرت فيها واحد شويه طا صافي ما عندي ما نبدل من هنا دابا القدام الا درت شي حاجه وكانت awkward ولا embarrassatني ولا شي حاجه و بديت كنفكر فيها اكثر من القياس كنسول راسي حاجه وحده واش نقد نبدلها الا كنت نقد نبدلها هي هذيك ما كنتش نقد نبدلها كاع صافي كنحط القلم كنهز يدي ما عندي ما ندير لاش غنبقى نفكر لاش عقلي غيبقى كيلاعب الماراطون وكيفكر يفكر وانا عارف راسي بلي ما نقدش نبدل هذيك الحاجه كاع ما تبدلش شنو الفائده من التفكير الا كان ما غادي يعطيني حتى شي نتيجه وما كنتسنى منه حتى شي نتيجه من المستقبل عقلي خدام باش يلقى لي الحلول باش نعيش باش نحسن من راسي باش نحسن من معيشتي باش نفرق ما بين الزوين والخايب بزاف د الحوايج ولكن انا مبغيتش عقلي يخدم باش نفكر في الباسي باش نبقى نفكر في واحد الطيحه طحت هادي عامين واحد الطيحه طحت هادي عامين و كاع دوك الاوكورد مومنتس بزاف ديال الحوايج اللي زعما وكون نجي نمسحهم راه عطاهم الله ولكن ما عندنا كيفاش دونك ترفع لنا القلم كملوا الكتاب فين وصلنا هاد الباراغراف. As you go more deeply into the realm of no mind, as it is sometimes called in the East, you realize the state of pure consciousness. In that state, you feel your own presence with such intensity and such joy that all thinking, all emotions, and your physical body, as well as the whole external world, becomes relatively insignificant in comparison to it. And yet, this is not a selfish but a selfless state. It takes you beyond what you previously thought of as yourself. That presence is essentially you and at the same time inconceivably greater than you. What I am trying to convey here may sound paradoxical or even contradictory, but there is no other way that I can express it. Instead of watching the thinker, you can also create a gap in the mind stream simply by directing the focus of your attention into the now. Just become intensely conscious of the present moment. This is a deeply satisfying thing to do. In this way, you draw consciousness away from mind activity and create a gap of no mind in which you are highly alert and aware, but not thinking. This is the essence of meditation. In your everyday life, you can practice this by taking any routine activity that normally is only a means to an end and giving it your fullest attention so that it becomes an end in itself. For example, every time you walk up and down the stairs in your house or place of work, pay close attention to every step, every movement, even your breathing. Be totally present. Or when you wash your hands, pay attention to all the sense perceptions associated with the activity, the sound and feel of the water, the movement of your hands, the scent of the soap, and so on. Or when you get into your car, after you close the door, pause for a few seconds and observe the flow of your breath. Become aware of a silent but powerful sense of presence. There is one certain criterion by which you can measure your success in this practice, the degree of peace that you feel within. So, the single most vital step on your journey toward enlightenment is this: learn to disidentify from your mind. Every time you create a gap in the stream of mind, the light of your consciousness grows stronger. One day you may catch yourself smiling at the voice in your head as you would smile at the antics of a child. This means that you no longer take the content of your mind all that seriously, as your sense of self does not depend on it. هذا شابتر آخر I think دابا enlightenment rising above thought. Isn't thinking essential in order to survive in this world? Your mind is an instrument, a tool. It is there to be used for a specific task, and when the task is completed, you lay it down. As it is, I would say about 80 to 90% of most people's thinking is not only repetitive and useless, but because of it, it's dysfunctional and often negative nature. Much of it is almost harmful. Observe your mind and you will find this to be true. It causes a serious leakage of vital energy. This kind of compulsive thinking is actually an addiction. What characterizes an addiction? Quite simply this: you no longer feel that you have the choice to stop. It seems stronger than you. It also gives you a full sense of pleasure. Pleasure that inevitably turns into pain. Why should we be addicted to thinking? Because you are identified with it, which means that you derive your sense of self from the content and activity of your mind, because you believe that you would cease to be if you stopped thinking. As you grow up, you form a mental image of who you are based on your personal and cultural conditioning. We may call this phantom ego, self the ego. It consists of mind activity and can only be kept going through constant thinking. The term ego means different things to different people. But when I use it here, it means a false self created by unconscious identification with the mind. 4 ساعة ونكملو لايف. حيناش بقى عندي كلاس كما كنت قلت لكم، دونك مور 4 ساعة تقريبا نستوبيو لايف. اوكي let's continue. To the ego, the present moment hardly exists. Only past and future are considered important. This total reversal of the truth accounts for the fact that in the ego mode, the mind is so dysfunctional. It is always concerned with keeping the past alive, because without it, who are you? It constantly projects itself into the future to ensure its continued survival and to seek some kind of release or fulfillment there. It says, one day, when this, that, or the other happens, I am going to be okay, happy, at peace. Even when the ego seems to be concerned with the present, it is not the present that it sees. It misperceives it completely because it looks at it through the eyes of the past, or it reduces the present to a means to an end. An end that always lies in the mind projected future. Observe your mind and you'll see that this is how it works. The present moment holds the key to liberation, but you cannot find the present moment as long as you are your mind. I don't want to lose my ability to analyze and discriminate. I wouldn't mind learning to think more clearly in a more focused way, but I don't want to lose my mind. The gift of thought is the most precious thing we have. Without it, we would just be another species of animal. The predominance of mind is no more than a stage in the evolution of consciousness. We need to go on to the next stage now as a matter of urgency. Otherwise, we will be destroyed by the mind, which has grown into a monster. I will talk about this in more detail later. Thinking and consciousness are not synonyms. Synonyms. Thinking is only a small aspect of consciousness. Thought cannot exist without consciousness, but consciousness does not need thought. Enlightenment means rising above thought, not falling back to a level below thought, the level of an animal or a plant. In the enlightened state, you still use your thinking mind when needed, but in a much more focused and effective way than before. You use it mostly for practical purposes, but you are free of the involuntary internal dialogue, and there is inner stillness when you do use your mind, and particularly when a creative solution is needed. You oscillate every few minutes or so between thought and stillness, between mind and no mind. No mind is consciousness without thought. Only in that way is it possible to think creatively, because only in that way does thought have any real power. Thought alone, when it is no longer connected with the much vaster realm of consciousness, quickly becomes barren, insane, destructive. The mind is essentially a survival machine, attack and defense against other minds, gathering, storing, analyzing information. This is what it is good at. But it is not at all creative. All true artists, whether they know it or not, create from a place of no mind, from inner stillness. The mind then gives form to the creative impulse or insight. Even the great scientists have reported that their creative breakthroughs came at a time of mental quietude. The surprising result of a nationwide inquiry among America's most eminent mathematicians, including Einstein, to find out their working methods, was that thinking plays only a subordinate part in the brief, decisive phase of the creative act itself. So, I would say that the simple reason why the majority of scientists are not creative is not because they don't know how to think, but because they don't know how to stop thinking. It wasn't through the mind, through thinking, that the miracle that is life on earth or your body was created and is being sustained. There is clearly an intelligence at work that is far greater than the mind. How can a single human cell measuring 1 over 1000 of an inch in diameter contain instructions within its DNA that would fill 1000 books of 600 pages each? The more we learn about the working of the body, the more we realize just how vast is the intelligence at work within it and how little we know. When the mind reconnects with that, it becomes a most wonderful tool. It then serves something greater than itself. Emotion, the body's reaction to your mind. Oh God. What about emotions? I get caught up in my emotions more than I do in my mind. I'm tired. Almost 1 hour of reading, and my mind is going blank. I need, I need a nap. Like I really, really need a nap. Um, but I have class after 10 minutes, so I guess no nap for now. Okay, let's continue. What about emotion? I get caught up in my emotions more than I do in my mind. Mind, in the way I use the word, is not just thought. It includes your emotions as well as all unconscious mental, emotional, creative patterns. Emotion arises at the place where mind and body meets. It is the body's reaction to your mind, or you might say, a reflection of your mind in the body. Oh, this is a good quote. I like it. For example, an attack thought or a hostile thought will create a buildup of energy in the body that we call anger. The body is getting ready to fight. The thought that you are being threatened physically or psychologically causes the body to contract, and this is the physical side of what we call fear. Research has shown that strong emotions even cause changes in the biochemistry of the body. These biochemical changes represent the physical or material aspects of the emotion. Of course, you are not usually conscious of all your thought patterns, and it is often only thought through watching your emotions that you can bring them into awareness. The more you are identified with your thinking, your likes and dislikes, judgments and interpretations, which is to say, the less present you are as the watching consciousness. The stronger the emotional energy charge will be, whether you are aware of it or not. If you cannot feel your emotions, if you are cut from them, you will eventually experience them on a purely physical level, as a physical problem or symptom. A great deal has been written about this in recent years, so we don't need to go into it here. A strong unconscious emotional pattern may even manifest as an external event that appears to just happen to you. For example, I have observed that people who carry a lot of anger inside without being aware of it and without expressing it are more likely to be attacked, verbally or even physically, by other angry people, and often for no apparent reason. They have a strong emanation of anger that certain people pick up subliminally, and that triggers their own latent anger. If you have difficulty feeling your emotions, start by focusing attention on the inner energy field of your body. Feel the body from within. This will also put you in touch with your emotions. We will explore this in more detail later. You say that an emotion is the mind's reflection in the body, but sometimes there are a conflict between the two. The mind says no while the emotion says yes, or the other way around. If you really want to know your mind, the body will always give you a truthful reflection. So, if you really want to know your mind, the body will always give you a truthful reflection. So look at their emotion, or rather feel it in your body. If there is an apparent conflict between them, the thought will be the lie. The emotion will be the truth, not the ultimate truth of who you are, but the relative truth of your state of mind at the time. Conflict between surface thoughts and unconscious mental process is certainly common. You may not yet be able to bring your unconscious mind activity into awareness as thoughts but it will always be reflected in the body as an emotion, and of this you can become aware. To watch an emotion in this way is basically the same as listening to or watching a thought, which I described earlier. The only difference is that while a thought is in your head, an emotion has a strong physical component and so is primarily felt in the body. You can then allow the emotion to be there without being controlled by it. You no longer are the emotion, you are the watcher, the observing presence. If you practice this, all that is unconscious in you will be brought into the light of consciousness. So observing our emotions is as important as observing our thoughts. Yes, make it a habit to ask yourself, what's going on inside me at this moment? That question will point you in the right direction, but don't analyze, just watch. Focus your attention within. Feel the energy for the emotion. If there is no emotion present, take your attention more deeply into the inner energy field of your body. It is the doorway into being. Okay, so enough for today. قرينا تبارك الله راه قرينا. اوكي هاي خصني انايا نوض نقعد حالتي حيتاش as you know اي سنطيح this غادي نلوح اليوم وقيلا واحد الفيديو I hope تكونوا مسالين تفرجوا فيه. غادي يكون كيما عارفين اليوم الحد ورانا قاري حيت ديجا وقيلا ذكرتها في اللايف. واليوم بغيت زعما نسجل لكم ان شنو حنا كنقراو في هذا النهار الحد. اول مره غادي نقراو نهار الحد. مفترض ماشي عندنا في سكيدجول ديالنا ولا شي حاجه، لا اليوم تزادنا كانت واحد العطله شدينا على نهار الجمعه، شدينا عطله. وعندهم شنو هنايا الا شديتي عطله اش كيديروا ديك النهار العطله كيخليوك تجي تخدم اولا تقرا النهار ديال الويكاند. دونك حنا شدينا نهار الجمعه اللي فات شدينا عطله وصافي خصنا نكونوا قاريين، شدينا عطله. اذا اشنو نهار الحد غادي تجي تقراه. داكشي اللي ما قريتيش نهار الجمعه اللي كنتي عطله غادي تجي نهار الحد ان شاء الله وغادي تقرا. انا قاري هانتي ما بغيتيش راك قاري ولا خدام غتجي تجي صافي. داكشي هذا بكر. داكشي علاش راني غادا للمدرسه في نهار الحد. بون انا شو ما عرفتش شنو عندي معايا الكلاس. اوكي خصني ندير باسي بعدا الباسي نمشي في الشطاره. ما عرفتش ندير هادي ولا هادي. سيبون ندير هادي. فريمون معطله انا واحد شويه، ماشي مشكل. نقول للاستاذه ديزولي وغادي ندخلو. شنو اخر يخصني؟ معايا كتاب وورقه باش نبان زعما راح نجي نقرا. كيعجبني هذا، معرفتش علاش، والله جو سي با علاش، ولكن ما كيعجبني بزاف. حتى هذا كيعجبني، هاد السيلوات. هذا ديال الناس اللي كيفرجين في ناروتو، الناس ديال ناروتو. عندي واحد السيلو ديال ساسكي، يعني بزاف ديال الحوايج ديال ناروتو صراحه. تقريبا نوريكم this is القدام ديال هذا ديالي، راه هو ناروتو. راه غارا. هادو ديال ون بيس، هذا ناروتو. بون معايا السيلو هادي من ريحه اللي وريتكم في واحد الفيديو من قبل. هاي دابا كنخشى في الشكاره معايا باش ملي نكون في المدرسه كيعجبني نقرش الريحه، كيعجبني تكون ريحتي زوينه. نسيت هذا، ما خصني نديه. فيه ناس بزاف، عرفتي علاش؟ كاين فريمون فيه ناس. اليوم فقت بكري بزاف وكنت سهرانه بالليل، داكشي علاش اي ثينك غادي يجيو اليوم عندنا الروم تشيك، و غادي يجيو تشيكيو الروم واش نقيه ولا لا. راه مجموعه، ولكن ما عرفت ممكن حملوش يجيو يديروا الروم تشيك. حنا كيبقاو يدققوا بزاف، لا مسحتش سيدي هنا ولا بديش هنا ولا بديش هنا، و كيفاش الناس كيحقوا بزاف. اوكي هاي تنسات هي خضرة. فريمون فيه مود ديال الناس. التليفون باقي مشارجي شويه اي ثينك، دونك ماشي مشكل. هذا زبل هنا. نصايب شعري، نلبس كاسكيطه. and that was all. هذا اللي من هنا وهذه. بون صافي هذا مكان. نمشي نقرا. يلا بسلام عليكم، نتشوفوا ان شاء الله في الفيديو الجاي. لا بقى لي الوقت غادي نبوستيه اليوم يكون نزل. ما تنساوش تفرجوا فيه. وهذا مكان. يلا بسلام عليكم، نتمنى يكون عجبكم اللايف. يلا باي باي، تشاو. اطلع واحد دقيقه بعدا بغيت نصايب. اوكي باي باي.